Welcome once again to the Sage, and thank you for this exciting and wonderful journey that you undertake regularly with us. The past few weeks have been intense, passionate, intense. We've aired shows in which, as I explained, I felt compelled to put out a call of action for all of us. I hope many of you listened to that call in which we passionately asked that all of us as Nigerians, as people that love this country, come together, work together to make this country a better place. We have no other. And as our contribution as the Sage towards that effort, we are going to be discussing several areas that concern us that we think urgent action is required. We must create the change we need. We must assess where we are, and we must collectively, starting from now, work even harder to make the positive life we all need ours as a reality. And so we embark on this exciting new phase of the journey. And we thought the starting point, the natural starting point, is to start with the issue of the young people in this country, a teeming population of people. Why? Apart from the fact that for us on the Sage and in C4C, it is our passion. We exist to empower, to support them. But it is also the natural thing to do. Let me start with the issue of statistics. In Nigeria, we're probably a little over 200 million people. And of that number, I personally feel that a conservative estimate of those under 40. The statistics say 50%, but then they measure 35 and under and have other subclassifications. But when you extend it to 40, which I believe is what needs to be done, I can say with some amount of confidence that actually the total population of young people in our country is close to 75 to 80%. It's a staggering number. We're talking perhaps over 120 million, 150 million people. A country that doesn't recognize the needs of this huge portion of its population is not going anywhere until there's progress in that segment. There is no progress. In fact, sometimes I personally say that when people tell us they're working and tell us they've made achievements and progress as our leaders and as our servants, they should really be saying to all of us, here are the figures, here are the statistics, particularly within that large population of young people who make up the huge majority of this country. But why is the issue urgent? Sheer number is not, probably is not the most important thing. Of this 75 to 80% of people, 53% of them are unemployed. That is huge. In fact, there are unemployed, let me qualify that, unemployed or underemployed. Our official statistics say that 13.9 million young people are unemployed. And again, it's an underestimation. We have a large number of poor people in this country. We can't hide away from that fact. And of our large population of the poor, 55 million of them are young people living in abject poverty. That is mind-boggling. I can go on and on and on. 68% of our young people only stopped at secondary education, even when we talk about literacy and illiteracy and being educated. One can list numbers and numbers, and in each sector you look, they are either poorly represented or poorly catered for, and so on and so forth. And yet, figures are there, yes. Figures are shocking and staggering. But I think, let me come down to issues of emotion and sentiment, and perhaps the real reality. We say young people. What are they really to all of us? When I think about this, I like to tell a story, a comment a friend made to me years ago, and which I never forget. The person had just lost a loved one. And in the obituary they put out, she said, when you lose your parent, it's so painful because you've lost your past or part of your past. When you lose your friend, your spouse, it's heartbreaking because you've lost an important part of your present. But when you lose your child, it is devastating because you've lost your future. You've lost your dreams. You've lost your hope, the thing that keeps you going. When we say young people, these young people constitute our future. They, in reality, are the essence for which all of us are living, are existing. They give us reason to wake up. They give us hope for the future. They are what keeps us going. Who are they? All of you have them. You can't escape. They're either your brothers, your sisters, your children, your friend, your neighbor, your grandchild for some of us, and so on and so forth. I also like to think that they represent sometimes the finest of what can be in this country. When I remember the gallant young people who marched a couple of years ago in protest against what they thought was an injustice in the country, in the End SARS movement. What I saw personally was the finest of the finest in this country. They were idealistic. They were full of hope. They were full of justified anger. They wanted a change they knew we needed for the progress of this country. It had a tragic end, it is true, but it is not cause to give up hope. Young people come in all forms. There were also those who took advantage of that situation to loot and to destroy, but again, are probably out of rage and frustration and so on and so forth. So young people are our reality, but they are diverse. They are heterogeneous. They are complex. And therefore, dealing and catering effectively for them requires work, requires a recognition of their diversity and complexity. And it requires all of us, because each and every one of us is connected to them. Our children, our sisters and brothers, our neighbors, name it, young people. When we effectively improve young people in this country, our country will definitely improve. They are our soul. They give sense to our existence. They are perhaps the most beautiful part of us as a people and as a country. Stay with us. In the next segment, I shall be introducing you to some exciting young people. They may not agree with me, but they are young from my old age vantage point, to join me in this very, very important discussion. I thank you. Welcome once again to The Sage, and thank you for having stayed with us. In the segment before this, we talked about the fact that these few episodes, probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, will be focusing on the urgent issue of the situation of our young people. We will not just be talking about the problems, the myriad of problems they have, but more concretely, the solutions. What do we do to make a difference? All of us. And to start the ball rolling in this discussion, it's a real privilege to say that I have 2 wonderful young people on the set with me today. They may not be thinking of themselves as young, but from my 7 decades of existence, they are young. They are young. And so we turn to them. My immediate left is Dr. Inya Ode. And next to her is Ifenla Oligminde. I always come to crops with that. 2 wonderful young people who live the life themselves, and therefore, by every definition, more qualified perhaps than I to discuss the issues of young people. My issues were some 20, 30 years ago. Never mind, I'm a grandmother and a mother, so I joke.
But you don't look it anyway. You don't look it.
That is the idea. The idea is to try not to be looking it, but I feel young inside. The way I felt now is the way I felt 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But they are here because I think they will bring a wonderful perspective to the discussion. From now on, I will drop the difficult surnames that I pronounce wrong. And to Inya, let me just say, Inya is a broadcaster. She's a compere, an events compere. I'm sure many of you have recognized her in various events that took place here in the country. Humanitarian, veterinarian by profession, as we have often found in this program, that many young people train for something to find their passion somewhere else. Yeah. And a development enthusiast. She's carved a niche for herself as a celebrated personality on air, on radio, where she's hosted previous programs such as Let's Talk About Abuja and the Midday Dialogue. Again, I'm sure many of you remember her beautiful voice. She also sings beautifully. It's a pity she will not be singing on this program. And she currently, however, heads the new media unit at Luxterra Leadership Foundation. And very important for this topic, not more important than the fact that she's the mother of 3 adolescents herself, is the fact that she coordinates the network and advocacy project of the foundation that deals with issues of young people, of adolescents, particularly in secondary schools and so on. So she's kindly agreed to be with us to provide her experience, her knowledge, which is huge and vast in this area, to the issue, to the table. Inya, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
And to Ifenla, a lovely young lady who has the courage. She's never hesitated. She's a lawyer by profession, to take on those issues, those very issues we're thinking about, we're going to be discussing. In her own short life, she's faced it head on. And so I won't try to read her CV, but just to say that Ifenla is a lawyer, she's a writer, she's a politician, she's an advocate, she's a project development consultant and expert. She's served in various non-governmental organizations. She's advocated for the issues of young people. And so I can go on and on and on. She even has a reality show that launched her as a youth advocate, and many, many other things that are full in your bio. But the point about Ifenla is that a young person very alive to the situation of young people in this country, and who decided right ab initio from as early as she could to be a voice to the issue. Something tells me that if you were in Lagos, you would have been part of the NSAS movement.
I was in Lagos. I was in Lagos at the time.
Okay, yeah. You know, so the kind of young person that has said to herself, I'm not going to keep quiet. Things need to change. My voice is going to be part of it. And so thank you, my dear, for being on set with us and for allowing us to share that reality, to hear your voice, to be a part of that solution, to direct and guide us, both of you, as we all work, because it has to be all of us, towards the solution. Welcome once again to the Sage.
Thank you.
I know it will be the beginning of our long association.
Amen to that. We look forward
Thank you. So let me start with you, Iya.
All right.
From your vantage point, from your experience, I had described a few of unsettling indices of young people in the opening segment. But it's just the tip of the iceberg, of course.
I agree.
And so I'm going to start by asking you, what do you think are some of the issues of concern about our young people in this country today? And perhaps all over the world, really.
Well, I think the issues actually vary. Thank you once again, the Sage, for this invitation and this honor. I really appreciate it. I think the issues actually vary, and not too far from what you've mentioned. I know you mentioned, statistics of those who are unemployed and those who are underemployed, but let's not forget those who are unemployable. Right, because they went through school and probably engaged in some form of malpractice, so cannot actually defend what they came out of school with. That's a very important statistic, because by the time they go into an office, maybe they come to yours to C4C and they say, okay, so I want to get employed here, and you go through their CV, it just doesn't match, and their results, it doesn't match with who they say they are, right? So that stat is really important. And there are a number of young people who are unemployable. And that's a concern for a lot of people. But besides that, I mean, the issues are enormous, right? We have a lot of young people who just want to get things quickly. It's a Gen Z generation. Yeah. So everything needs to be sharp. It needs to be quick. Right? So people are going around and thinking, okay, so we need to make fast money, we need to make fast breaks, we need to get everything as quickly as possible. But life is not exactly like that. And I think it comes from an orientation and a societal orientation that has, come to be a norm, so to speak, because they see it on social media. I mean, when you were growing up, you didn't have social media. When I was growing up, I didn't have social media, right? But right now, it's the life and it's the generation that they're in. So they see a lot of people on the fast pace, and then young people want to be on that fast pace, not realizing that there is a process to growth. There is a process to wealth, and all of that. And that's a very, very big challenge. That's why you see pictures. I don't know if you've seen the news, and you see pictures of 16, 17, 15-year-olds with a pot, wanting, with someone's head in it, for ritual killings.
I'm going to hold you there and emphasize one or two things you said.
Sure.
Don't, because this ritual bit is so important.
Absolutely.
That we need to address it a bit more.
Yeah.
But let me just emphasize two things you have said.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about unemployable.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
But let me also say, those who never even went to school. Recently, UNICEF was giving figures for Nigeria and saying out of school children are actually on the increase.
Yes.
So there's they're diverse, like I said, heterogeneous, with multiple problems, complexities, and therefore the problems are myriad, they're many, and we need to recognize those different loci.
Absolutely.
So I agree with that, and I think it's important that you made us realize that that there's so many of them with even more acute problems than we know.
Now, this is not to, take away the role of parenting, because that's another key issue we have in society. So you have parents who are not present for their children. And then the children are influenced by so many things. There's so many influences everywhere, on their phones, on billboards, on all over the place, their peers. There's so many influencers everywhere. So when parents are not present to positively influence their children and probably teach values, the values that we have come to know, values of integrity, of honesty, of discipline, and all of that. Those values are so important in grounding the child, that the child stays grounded and says, okay, so because I have learned so and so, from home, and my parents are very big on these particular values, I will not go against it, no matter what happens on the outside. So that the lack of parental care and parental presence, because the parents are, we need to make money, we need to pay school fees, we need to meet up with all the demands society puts on us. Because of that, sometimes parents are not present. We've been to schools. I know you introduced me as the Network and Advocacy Group. The Network and Advocacy Group is a group where we advocate for a better Nigeria, right? But in Luxterra, we're also involved in other projects, and it's that project you're actually talking about. That's an integrity project, where we visited schools, and we speak to children and their teachers, and in a case, parents really, of their responsibility. And we've seen that, by talking to these children, on a few occasions, some of the children have come up to my executive director, Father George Usani, to say, I think our parents need this kind of training you are giving to us, and that shocked him and shocked us as well. He said, our parents need this training. They are the ones who need this training. And, in the course of these trainings we do with the children, we counsel them as well. And we hear a lot of things going on at home that have actually traumatized these children, and they're not even able to say to their parents because their parents are not present. So presence is not just about you being physically in the house, but then what about talking to your children? What about being a mentor to your children, an influencer for your children? That's something that is really missing in the lives of a lot of young people. And, if we don't intentionally turn this around, then, we'll keep having the negative statistics we have all over the place.
Those are profound words. And again, let me just underscore, the element about influence and the fact that actually this now in this present modern age, where the world is one world, the amount of communication and information that goes around means that our young people are so much more vulnerable to being influenced, to ideas and so on, that need to be monitored and restricted when need be, and so on and so on. But we will come back to that. Let me leave you at this point and turn to Ifenla and say, from your perspective, what about the situation of the young people in in our country, the problems.
Okay, so I think I'm going to have to continue from where she stopped. She's talked about parental influence. She has spoken about social media and what have you, but talking about parental influence itself. So there's this saying that broken people break people.
Absolutely.
And you can't expect someone who is broken or who comes from a broken family to be useful to himself or herself or to the society at large. And so it has much more of psychological and mental and emotional effect on children. In NLP, that's neuro-linguistic practice, there's this thing about how children are influenced by their whatever it is they are taught at home and their immediate environment. So say, for instance, their parents are trying to instill value system, integrity in them, but these same parents who are not available leave these children with their neighbors who drink, who smoke. It's going to be like it's going to have adverse effect on such children, because their parents are teaching them positive values and they are getting negative values. So it becomes a problem for such children. Now, these children are not necessarily from a broken family, but because they are having clash of value system there's a conflict, so it affects them. But then at some point there's a discontinuity, there is a clash, or there is a distance between what the parents are teaching them and continuing with that, to ensure that, okay, I taught you this, are you following through with what I've taught you? Or I taught you this when you get to school, the things you're learning from school, because parents cannot help what their children are going through in school. Parents cannot, they can only guide, they can only mentor, they can only monitor. Say, for instance, you give them iPads and what have you, and you monitor the kind of websites. There are lots of high-tech or technological stuff out there now that you can actually influence or monitor the kind of websites your children, go through. If they try to go outside of that boundary, they won't be able to connect. But when they go to school, they are able to do these things. So when they get to school and you monitor them as they're going to school, as they're coming back.